Our second presenter will be Loreen Hackett of PFOA Project New York. Loreen has been advocating for contaminated families in Hoosick Falls, New York, since their severe contamination discovery over 6 years ago, leading to the issuance of the first NPL federal Superfund site declarations for PFOA. Learned through biomonitoring, her family has some of the highest levels of PFOA tested in the area. In June 2016, she created PFOA Project New York, which has gone worldwide and continues to share all things PFAS. She is co-chair of the Hoosick Falls Community Action Working Group established for the Superfund sites and is on the Community Advisory Panel Committee for the CDC awarded site study. She serves on the leadership committee of the National PFAS Contamination Coalition. She has attended and submitted testimony in 2 congressional hearings in Washington, D.C., and continues working with elected officials on bills regulating PFAS, as well as with varying environmental organizations. She is also a cancer survivor, potentially linked to her PFAS exposure, and has a primary interest on health effects. Thank you for being here, Loreen.
Thank you so much, Laurel. Thank you to the Academy for allowing us to be heard today. I can also relay to you the plethora of painful stories and ill effects from Hoosick Falls due to our severe contamination. Each of my family members suffer one or more linked illnesses echoed in too many other families here. In order to move forward, you have to look back, and I'd like to begin with some straight numbers. The national average for PFOA exposure is reported to be 2.04. Allow me to share these numbers: 266, 142, 117, 68, 64, and 53. Those are my family's frightful levels of PFOA. The highest is mine, followed by my 2 grandchildren, then ages 6 and 4. The geometric mean of our participating village residents on the municipal water supply was 64.5, and that population is merely 3,500. With numbers like those, a parent's first instinct is to rush to make a doctor's appointment, and with what we know about the harm and toxicity of PFOA, rightfully so. Thus began the exhausting struggle beyond the shock to find out what to do next. Hoosick Falls had a well-publicized debacle of a start. The do not drink order was issued by EPA in November 15. After our first round of blood testing results, our DRH orchestrated a community discussion with one strangely chosen pediatrician from New York City in the summer of 16, whom I can only describe as having drawn the crappy short straw, as he had admittedly no knowledge or background of PFAS. He recklessly said to an entirely packed room, and I quote, "I don't believe any of your illnesses are caused by PFOA." To say we were mortified is an understatement, because by then we'd educated ourselves frustratingly because we had no other option or direction then. We also had random voluntary sampling of a community health study, and the results were just astonishing. Of the 443 responses, the questionnaire reported cases of kidney cancer, 31, testicular cancer, 11, thyroid disease, 231, pregnancy-induced hypertension, 35, ulcerative colitis at 71. This report can be found on the Bennington EDU website. The numbers on the reported cancers were also higher than that was on our state cancer registry. At the time, I was also given a phone number to an environmental health center, which brought me directly to a janitorial staff at a hospital. Clearly, these few examples of missteps gave rise that in order to protect our families, we had to research for ourselves, which is often arduous and confusing for so many. While our state response has gotten much better over the years, valuable time was lost. New York is now one of the few states which lists PFOA and PFAS as hazardous substances and has since dropped the MCLs to 10 parts per trillion each. We've also since had 2 rounds of blood testing that spanned 2.5 years. If it wasn't for our local GP, who dove into the issues here and believed it, I honestly don't know where my family would be today. We've all gone on with further testing for the linked effects due to his knowledge. The best we can hope now, particularly for our children, is ongoing monitoring in the hopes of catching any disturbing effects sooner. For many of us here, including me, it's simply too late. Bringing my grandkids to various appointments, such as pediatric neuros and endocrinologists, became apparent after the very first that I had to start bringing a dozen health studies with me. A couple listened. Woefully, to those who adamantly refused, the children never returned. What treatment options or further testings may have been lost? We've learned doctors with environmental toxins training are way too few and far between. Perhaps continuing educational credits can be offered as additional learning incentives. Donating blood with levels like ours here has also been questioned. Many residents here use the closest hospital with an array of doctor offices in Bennington, Vermont, which had its own publicized contamination issues. It's been about 6 years now, yet many of these physicians still haven't even heard of PFAS. For example, not many months ago, an endocrinologist from the facility was on a radio program, and I called in to ask how up to date she was on PFAS. She had no clue. I was trying to explain the links to a rheumatologist there, who completely dismissed me and reportedly blamed genetics on the array of immune issues I suffer, as well as the breast cancer I survived, which after years of prior confirmed testing in my family history is simply just not true. I've lost track of how many surgeries I've had, and I still get treated like a moron. How do I convince him that I have fervently researched my illnesses, which are linked effects? Begrudgingly, here I go to the printer. Bone and marrow effects, T-cell changes, inflammation leading to bone destruction, cytokine storms, and leukocyte disturbances, and osteoarthritis, which I am loaded with. Being made to feel intellectually inadequate due to not being credentialed is yet another stumbling block, as every part of me doesn't want to go back. I'm utterly dumbfounded that we still have to deal with this scenario repeatedly in offices directly situated in contaminated communities. When did this happen to me? After 6 years of this, last week. Even today, I question, will it even matter? Sadly, I'm only one story from our entire area. I hope to prove to you that those of us speaking here today, even though we aren't doctors, undoubtedly know our stuff. I'm working with UAlbany on health study data tables in preparation for our upcoming site study with relevant monthly submissions. With endocrine disruption and immune suppression becoming more problematic and the vast array of illness linked to either one of those affected, testing need be fully rounded to include more than kidney, liver, and thyroid tests, which seem to be the first basics. Troubling neuro and reproductive issues are also now feared, as is breast cancer. The data we're gathering is listed and growing on the UAlbany website. For women who are considering pregnancy with higher levels, OBGYNs should inform that PFAS will pass on to their baby and what risk that may mean. PFAS passing through breast milk increases in the baby at scary rates. Without this information, I contest that many a mother here wish they had been told to make more informed decisions, who now feel utterly guilt-ridden that they are the ones that poison their children. Should the term breastfeeding is best even be applicable in this situation, when the level in the baby may double or triple of the mother's, thereby increasing risk to sensitive developing systems? That basic statement needs to be completely reevaluated in contaminated communities. I started PFOA Project NY on Twitter shortly after our blood results, which has morphed into the past 5 years of sharing all things PFAS for the purpose of furthering awareness. I feel it a duty now. The picture beside me is of my grandbabies, which leads my page, which many may be familiar with. I also collaborated with many others, which led to joining amazing people on the National PFAS Contamination Coalition. Many of us here today are in leadership roles. As co-chair of our community working group developed due to our PFOA Federal Superfund sites, plural, we update our community monthly. I've testified at many a hearing. We are still currently being exposed by industrial PFAS stack emissions, which leads to more bioaccumulation. We're also back to square one, knowing we are being exposed to more unregulated PFAS that are reporting damaging health effects. With the regrettable substitutions and small trains now being shown as harmful, bioaccumulation and total body burden must be considered to those seeking medical direction. Continued blood testing should be made available as well for more than the only 6 that we've been tested for. Research has now gone far beyond the benchmark of the C8 science panel nearly 10 years ago. We have learned much here in Hoosick Falls, and much more can be learned from here with acquired data we have to offer. I pray this panel will not only use this data, but also our years of experience garnered from our ongoing struggle and nightmare. Incidentally, discussion of PFAS poisoning needs more than a rushed 5-minute office visit than a swift boot out the door. Last week, as ordinary citizens, we've learned, and I hope I've clearly demonstrated today examples of what doctors need to. Thank you.